Hello and welcome to the Drum History Podcast. I'm your host, Bart Vanderzee, and today we are joined back by our old friend, Mr. Gerry Porter of hazelshould.com. Gerry, welcome back.
Thanks, Bart. It's really nice to be back here. I'm thrilled.
Yes, number 3, I think. It's good to have you as a trusted returning guest of the show. I always feel like when you're on, I always like to space them out a little bit with return guests, but sometimes it just something popped in my mind and was like, you know what? I need a Gerry episode.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's fun to be back talking drums, talking drum stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
And the holidays.
The holidays. So for people who are listening, we'll describe that Gerry's got his background kind of Christmased out here. He's got, red drums. He's got green Paiste color cymbals. And it's a magical time of the year. Because if you're listening to this, the day it is released, it's Christmas Eve, 2024. So, Gerry, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays to all the drummers out there. So.
Yes. And we're recording this on the 19th, a couple days before. But really, though, it is a great time for drummers. And I mean, honestly, I think, to segue into the topic for today, which we're going to kind of look at, this is Gerry's great idea. We're going to look at the relationship that people had with the instruments over the years and where they bought them and how they acquired them. And going from mom and pop shops to, guitar centers to eBays to Reverbs and all the different ways in between. And I personally, I do have very fond memories of getting a new cymbal for Christmas. Basically, if you're a drummer, it's very likely that became like what you got for Christmas for most of your, young adulthood, young adult life.
Oh yeah, Christmas, birthday. Maybe a bar mitzvah. your
bar mitzvah,
confirmation. Yeah. If you're one of those late ones to getting baptized. Your baptism. Maybe you start them off early. No, your wedding. No, of course. Wedding. Yeah, you need to get a splash cymbal for your wedding, like an ozone splash.
Yes, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
But Gerry, so I'll throw it over to you here. So let's talk, though. I think the history side of this, to get drum history, is really looking at the differences of how people used to buy drums way back when, in the earliest days to all the way up to now. But I know you've got some notes, and this is all, very well curated. So
very well curated. I borrowed Santa's pen.
There you go. You did it with a crayon or something.
No, yeah. No, I was talking to my good buddy Patrick Wiseman, and I have him to thank for a lot of our discussion, just getting it flowing. We were talking about, okay, the drum set's maybe, give or take 100, 120 years old as a contraption set, and so looking back, how our relationship with the instrument, purchasing, learning about it, consuming it, obviously it affects how we played it, what the availability was over the years. Now, I wasn't around in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, but that was very specifically a time. The drum shops, these old-timey drum shops that are old-timey now, they were like a hardware store. Right, they were that custom. The store itself was unique. If you were talking about like Frank's Drum Shop in Chicago, or Manny's Music in New York, or I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so we had Prospect Music, and the shops themselves were as custom and unique as like a snare drum from like 1912.
Yeah.
They had a feeling. They smelled of like wood. You'd walk in there, it smelled of wood, and there would be a guy there, like Bill or Hank or Butch Anthony. He knew you. He knew what you liked.
Yeah.
He was consistently there. That was maybe a job he had. It was like a profession. It was like going to your butcher, and he knew the cuts of meat that were specific to you.
He'd be in a suit. He'd be wearing a suit.
He'd be in a suit. Yeah.
As opposed to now, like a tattooed, bearded 25-year-old. Again, speaking as a tattooed, bearded 34-year-old. But then it would be what seemed like they were probably younger. But you look at pictures, you're like, that's a 45-year-old man in a suit.
Yeah.
working at this drum shop, buttoned up, looking very clean and sharp. It was a
Yeah.
different time.
But he's a professional drum salesman.
Yeah.
And, those guys would be there for years, for decades. And, or you could stop by a Vetus Zildjian.
Mm-hmm.
I think back in the day, the 30s and the 40s, I think you could just stop by a Vetus Zildjian in Massachusetts there, and they would cater to you. And we're, going that experience, I as we talk through and we go through these decades, I'm not calling out any one as better than the other. Patrick and I were talking about the pros and cons, what we've gained as drummers buying and, experiencing this, and maybe what's been lost. And so I thought having such a personal experience like that, I'm not going to say it's gone, but it's definitely changed. It's, I'm not going to say there's no personal experiences now, but obviously with the internet and online, and everything is available to us now. But how satisfying is that?
I don't know why. I always picture too these older drum stores, and maybe I have a very distinct. I did a Frank's drum shop episode with Rob Cook, and I have a very distinct image in my mind of a lot of these 1930s, 1940s drum shops as being in busy downtowns of big cities in like a two, and they'd be on the second story of a kind of tall, like 6-story building. Now that wouldn't be the case though if you were in Cincinnati or Cleveland, where it'd be a different layout, but very, very jazzy, very like you'd go up to the second floor. I don't know why that I always have that
up
image
to
in
the
my
second
mind.
floor. Well, you're like, oh, there's the Victorian Bank. And there's the fancy drum shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
they would have and they would, in one of those pictures I remember from the Franks episode, they would have the calf skin samples stretched out that you could, I guess, choose your calf skin that you'd want, and then they would cut it and get it ready for you, which was interesting. You don't get that anymore.
Custom. I'm talking about custom, And one thing that is fascinating to me that I think we've lost. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but these old shops used to be like, these guys are Slingerland dealers.
Yes.
Those guys are Ludwig dealers. And it's almost like if you're like a Cleveland Browns fan or like a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, it's like, no, we don't do that Ludwig thing over there that the Ludwig guys are doing. We're Slingerland folks, and we go to that drum butcher because he gets us the sirloin cut. And it was a big deal, like a big celebration, when one of those old timey shops would now all of a sudden become a leady dealer, or we now carry Fibes.
Yeah.
And that was something that would sometimes come out of like a post NAMM show thing that you'd see. Like, they've signed up dealers in Cincinnati, and now that's your Slingerland dealer there. So
they had a 5 martini lunch with Slingerland,
and
then signed them up.
Exactly.
I mean, we were talking before we started about pros and cons of the different eras. Now, I don't think that's one. I mean, we're using that lightly, but maybe a con might be that your local drum shop that's right by you does not carry any other brand except those other ones. Now, it's pretty cool if it's Slingerland or if it's Ludwig, but I remember working at a drum store, which we'll get to that discussion later, but there was a guitar store around the corner, and all they carried was Stag guitars. And I was like, I don't think many people want Stag.
You're right. And
like, get Fender. So I guess it's a con if you want something specific and that brand doesn't, that shop wouldn't carry it.
Well, and of course it'd be like, we now, Zildjian, the only serious choice, which is great marketing. You're like, if this store doesn't carry Zildjian, then they're not serious.
Yeah.
They're for somebody else, those other guys. In my case, the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's for a Steelers fan.
Yes.
No,
in the Bengals, we also do not like the Steelers, but I don't want to alienate my Steeler fans listening. But yeah.
No, so that was one thing that's, there was consistency, there was longevity in terms of the personnel, the relationship, and there was this professionalism that, the guy behind the counter would know drums, and he would know what you last bought, and he would know what you needed.
Yeah.
I remember there's a place. Actually, this is funny. For my confirmation, I asked, what present do you get? Well, my mom didn't know what to get me. I had a drum set that my cousin gave to me, and it was an old Royce, and it was garbage, and I loved the hell
Yeah.
out of it.
Sure.
And the guy, my mom went to the local music store in Cleveland up the road. It was Academy Music, a couple of old timey guys with suits next to the Victorian Bank. And the guy drove over to my house. When I was at school, the guy drove to
Wow.
my house. My mom said, please come over. He came in, he looked at the set, and he said, well, your son needs a floor tom. Because I didn't have one. So he's
Yeah.
like, you should get your son a floor tom. And he ordered me a black floor tom that matched my Royce kit. And
Huh.
all of a sudden, like, I get confirmed. I get a new Saint's name and a new floor tom. But I was like, how did you guys know? And my mom was
Yeah.
like, well, the guy from Academy Music came by our house. He looked at your drum set and he saw what was missing and what the next piece on the kit would be. And you're like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think all of this there should be caveats of like, there are still drum stores, there are still drum shops, but that's some special treatment right there that doesn't seem, I mean, I feel like drum stores are more on the rise than they were 15 years ago, where it seemed like there was a lot less, but that's the special kind of treatment that you can't get from eBay or whatever. Moms won't know what to look for without the help of a professional, a drum man.
A drum man. I like that. That's right. A drum man. Yeah. I guess nowadays you could be like, dear Google, what is missing from my drum set? And that's a lot of answers right there. Yeah. It's just a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So that transition would be obviously those drum stores, like 30s, 40s, 50s. My grandpa, I have pictures of him in the 50s in New York, and he took lessons with George Wetling, and he was from New Rochelle, and Gene Krupa was from Yonkers. And he told me stories of like, I would see Gene play, and I was like, okay, whatever. Until I talked to him later when I did the show, and I kind of learned more, and I was like, wait, a lot of the stuff he's saying is lining up with the New York scene and all this stuff. But anyway, that was 50s.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing pictures of him, and he'd buy a bass drum and he'd get brushes, and just thinking about him going to these shops and buying them is super cool to think about your grandpa doing that. But anyway, what I'm getting at is 60s, Beatles hit.
Oh, yeah.
It just blows up. I mean, everyone's buying drums. It must have been a good time to have that business, but it makes you think then, what's the turn? What's the next chapter that we get to?
When Patrick and I were kind of walking through talking about this, we thought, okay, you did have small little shops that taught lessons, carried stag guitars, that sort of thing. And they would get maybe the kids in after school, but then you had these regional drum shops that were large. There was one in Northeast Ohio called Lentine's Music. And the reason I bring them up is they were the largest store. You would go down into the basement, as you said, there's always floors.
Yeah.
And they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cymbals. Just hundreds of them. Like it, and if you were, 15, it looked like the Zildjian warehouse in your mind. Yeah. I was looking for a China High. I asked Santa for it, and Santa used my father to go find one of these, and
as a vessel,
as a vehicle. Yep. And he was, he said, I'll never forget. It was a China High, and my dad told me the day after Christmas, I had to drive hours down to find a China High. It's not that they had a lot of China Lows, they had Swishes, they had Pangs. There was not a China High. But Lentine's, My father said, you got to go to this place in Akron, Ohio called Lentines. I've never seen anything like it. So
Oh
that
my
was the
God.
70s. Yeah, the 70s, you'd have these enormous regional stores. I think
Wow.
the next move was those enormous regional stores got bigger and bigger. And then they started put out what we like to call this catalog era,
Yes.
which would be maybe the mid 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Catalogs of music stores in general, or I guess it's just catalogs
Yeah,
across
like
the board,
we're
mail
we're
order.
thinking mail order got like thoroughbred music. Was it
Yeah.
interstate music? There was always one that would show up at Long Island Drum Center. What was the one that show up? It always had a dude who looked like Otto from The Simpsons, like with long hair and the guitar on the cover.
I don't know. That's slightly before my time, but I loved getting the musician's friend. There was a big musician's
Yeah,
friend magazine. Sweetwater did magazines, which I don't know, but like it kind of went away. But that was like Sears, the Sears
yeah,
catalog. I'd
yeah.
sit there and circle things, and then you'd kind of find your way to the bra section, and then you'd wait. No, I gotta get back to the drums. You go, yeah,
Well, so I would think what that era was like is you're waiting to intercept your report card in the mail so your parents don't see it, and
yeah,
this tome comes,
yes,
this like 8 pound Bible comes, and
yeah,
it's like kind of hard and heavy, and
yeah,
you open it up and you're like, well, this is all garbage bass guitars. Wait a minute here.
yeah. We
And
got
then you
drums.
not only drums, but they have every single Zildjian. It was like they copy and pasted the Zildjian
Yeah,
like catalog, and
yeah,
they had a 20-inch Earth Ride, a 22-inch Earth Ride. They had, what was the one? Didn't they have an Earth Plate, or there was one of the? It was it was like a plate, a chime. God, I'm gonna get it wrong.
sure.
It was like the Bhutan chime.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And it was
Someone used that. Did Neil use that, or someone used something like
something, and
some large drum, famous drummer used that.
they had the 16 China high, the 18 China high, the 20, the 22,
Yeah,
and all this sort of ran around in your mind. And what the experience was like is you pouring over these, you're like, so everything is available to me through this book,
yeah,
but I don't know what it sounds like.
yeah. That's an interesting point because it's every single thing that exists. Whereas before, you could maybe see your favorite drummer playing it. You could
Yeah.
maybe see it in Modern Drummer, but there was no way you were gonna buy it that way. There was no distribution center.
Right. And so the
Yeah,
original, one of the big differences for that was going back to the Frank's Drum Shop, your local drum store next to the bank. You're like, all of a sudden it completely depersonalized the experience. You're at
sure.
home, you have this enormous book that's filled with a bunch of garbage bass guitar stands,
Yeah,
except for page 112 to 158, which is
yeah,
golden. And it's like your imagination starts, it turns into this tornado.
yeah,
So depersonalized it, you can shop from home, but you can't hear it. And Butch or Tony isn't there to tell you what it is, to tell you what it does, and all you
yeah,
have is this sort of dry description, a one-line description of maybe what it is. And there might be a picture of a ping ride, and it'll say like, our most popular seller, terrific for high frequency power. And you're like,
yeah.
and then you come across an Earth Ride, and you're like, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it sounds like. And
It will, and it's expensive.
and it's expensive. And you're like, I have to have one, but I don't know why.
Well, there's limited with the magazines, and even there were drum catalogs going back to the 40s
Yeah.
to the 30s. I mean, but that's the difference between I'm thinking of a 1943 Gretsch catalog, which I have like a reproduction of that Rob Cook sent me, where it's like that's just Gretsch. What we're
Yeah.
talking about is big book of everything,
Yeah.
huge thick magazine, a catalog, but there goes the days of we only sell Ludwig. We only sell
Exactly.
Slingerland, because now it's all being mixed together. So I wonder if that brings in the distribution centers and how these brands work together. And
Right.
you're competing for space then on the page where there's only so many pictures, but there's a whole ton of line items of SKUs. So I'm sure they probably paid to get their extra to get, their whatever ride featured with a picture, because of course that would sell better. It's just interesting to think of the
Right.
marketing behind it.
And what was they would famously have like call now 1-800.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is like although they're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that would normally be a long distance phone call for you folks at home from a certain era. You're like, but now it's free. I could call up this place for free and ask them what's an earth ride. And they'll be like, what are you talking about, kid? Why did you get a C- in spelling? Your report card's on the way. Intercept that. No, but it was as if you were calling some room in heaven.
Yeah.
It's just you don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it sounds like. You get to ask questions. Everything's available. I mean, you can't really get the guy to play it over the phone. But again, it's a very, you're trying to reach for it to be personal, but by design, it's not. By design, it's not. Some mothership that's call our 1-800 number from home.
Yeah. Really, it's just a big warehouse full of boxes. But when I was a kid and I'd order out of the Sears catalog in the 90s, and, that was even more just like toys as opposed to drum stuff. But that process to purchase, let's say you wanted to, pull the trigger and buy yourself a brand new Tama drum set from the catalog. For people who were born, in 2010 or something, explain like, how would that process go of actually ordering it? I mean, would you read them the credit card number, or would it be mail in a check, or how did that usually work?
Yeah, generally reading a credit card number, although, I'm sure you could mail in a check. I never did that. I mean, I think they had an enormous warehouse of things available, but if you did want to special order something, that might take 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. But the relationship with the gear, the process was you would sit there, you would maybe read either through Modern Drummer, which was having a golden era from, say, the mid 80s to, 2000. It was parallel. Modern Drummer and the gear and the discussion would be parallel with this catalog era. And so you would order it, and this is the crazy thing. It just existed in your mind until the day it showed up.
Yeah.
And then when it showed up, you loved it.
Yeah.
The end. Oh yeah, sure. You loved it. I mean, that was kind of it.
Come home and see it on the porch and be like, yes.
Yes. And you would unpack it. You'd be like, and the philosophy behind it, or however my mind worked like, I got some new beats and I was like, I love these new beats. This is the sound. Even though it wasn't my favorite sound, when I did put them on the stand and I started playing, it just was, I liked my friend's quick beats better, but it didn't matter. I ordered the new beats. That's what I got. And this is what I'm playing now. So I made myself love the new beats that I ordered.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't really another choice. I suppose you could send it back, but then you can't. That's going to take 2-3 weeks. And there's,
this shipping alone right now, it's pretty crazy how quick you get used to 2-day shipping. Yeah. Or I remember needing batteries for a video job I was working on, and they came at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and I ordered them at like midnight. It's insane how fast you can get stuff. But really, if you ordered it, you'd wait 2 weeks, you'd pay shipping. If you wanted to return it, that's a hassle.
Yeah. And
then you order it again, and then it's like a month between getting the next thing.
You better like the Earth Ride. That's all I'm saying. You better like something dry that goes dink.
Yeah. Something that has no sustain.
You're playing that on your trio gig.
That night.
That night. So but what's interesting to me is that you did love the Earth Ride. I mean, I don't know. I did. It was kind of like, it didn't really seem like an option. You're like, that's just what you did because that's what showed up because that's what you chose. And
Yeah.
that was how it is. And I think part and parcel of that was this concept of delayed gratification, which we don't really have today. And again, that could be a good thing. We get these things, we get them almost instantaneously. But was there something about delayed gratification that was enjoyable? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's
something happened in your brain that treated the arrival of the product a little differently.
It makes you more, the excitement builds up. It's good to have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
You know, day after day, to be at school being like, God, I hope it's there.
Yeah.
And then the crushing disappointment when it doesn't show up that day.
Yes.
And it's Friday and you're like, well, that's it. It's not coming until Monday.
That's it. It's not coming till Monday. I might call this 1-800 number because it's free. And I ask for the dude. I'm like, hey man, you told me the Earth ride was, I thought I was calling heaven.
He's like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
But one thing too, along the way with this, because we're talking about print and, you know, publications, is classifieds.
Oh,
and buying used gear. I think that's worth mentioning too. And John Aldridge and Not So Modern Drummer.
Oh, yeah.
And the network of guys calling. I mean, the real deal collectors would be like, I've got a Black Beauty. Do you have this, what is it, Struple snare or whatever, that the paint, but like the system of doing that. Because when I was younger, I got into pretty early on it was around here, it was Trade and Post, the little kind of, you know, 8-inch by, you know, 5-inch, tiny little classified, not like it's in the newspaper, obviously, but the small little penny saver kind of used crap magazine.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I know that's different than new gear, but that's a great way to get stuff.
For sure. Out here in Los Angeles, famously the Recycler.
Okay.
And I moved here in 2004. The Recycler was still, it was like the Trade and Post. They had everything. They had trucks, they had water beds, they had, couches. And of course they had drums. And I think it cost like $1, $2, $3. And it was like gambling. I'll pay the $3 to get my ticket to enter because there might be a Thomas Star Classic kit in here for $500.
Yeah.
And again, that was sort of, I don't know what, I think when it comes to gear, if you're certainly if you're buying it from a catalog or the Recycler, or even if you're buying anything online, or, there is a sense of gambling
and hunting.
That's right. And it can be kind of, addicting.
Yeah.
Because you win a couple and you're like, oh, dude, I can do this all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a ritual too. Because I remember going to UDF, which was a gas station here, getting a Cowtails, a Sunkissed, and a Trade and Post. And then sitting there looking through before I inevitably got a stomach ache from that combination.
It's a hell of a Friday night.
But like you're thumbing down, you're running your finger down, and then you might look at it again the next day and be like, wow, I didn't see that. You're like, your brain skipped something. So it's kind of, that obviously is a precursor to like Craigslist, which we'll get to later with the online, the eBays and stuff. But
it also, as you said, Not So Modern Drummer, and looking at things like on the Trade and Post, the Recycler, the local, you would find you could foster a relationship with other local drum buyers, drum dealers, drum collectors, and there was a very personal. There could be a personal relationship that would build up over time from those, like a hobbyist group.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's the guy who cheats the system, who makes an ad that reverses it and says, I buy drums.
Yeah, I buy the top and then has the dollar sign.
Yes. And then the woman whose husband passed away and has a whole bunch of drums, she just calls him and doesn't list it.
That's right.
It's like, he beat us.
I have a bunch of these drums. They look like they have these engraved patterns on them. Please come and take them.
Yeah, exactly. These funny engraved patterns and these round lugs on them.
Yeah. So
All right, where do we go? So we were at the catalogs and stuff,
the
trading
catalogs,
posts,
the
the
trading
recycler.
posts,
Yeah,
somewhere in there we had Modern Drummer was parallel. Also, just a mention to the MTV generation, because you would see these things
yeah,
and then you would go and get them. Like,
yeah,
okay, I saw Tommy Lee played Peisty 3000s. I have to have a 3000.
sure.
So then that, the local shop that only sells Stag guitars, they're not going to have the Peisty 3000. Only so then you would go and you'd have to order it and you wouldn't hear it. It would just show up. So I
Yeah.
think MTV had a lot to do in that generation too, of how we bought, how we consumed. Um, you see it in the video, so it must be great. But again, you still don't hear it, right?
No, but
So
you think you hear it.
you think you
I
hear
mean,
it, yes.
because like what you're hearing is a studio recording
Yeah.
that's completely, and again, they're probably like, it's like Lars using a 4-piece drum set in a
Yeah.
video versus using the, Black Album kit.
Look,
or
everybody's
something.
playing an old Gretsch kit. That's
It's all
It's
Gretsch.
all Gretsch kit, but there's these pearls that are in the
Yeah, but
video.
that's where like A&R guys and product placements and all that kind of stuff really comes in to get that, to get the drum, to get the logo on the bass drum of the big players, for sure.
The next era that we thought about is a doozy. It is the Guitar Center era.
Yeah.
Which, and I'll throw in Sam Ash too. Let's, rest in peace, Sam Ash.
Yes.
So Guitar Center came down like a mothership and just descended on cities. And they descended on like mid city. It wasn't just New York and Chicago and LA. Now, Cleveland had a Guitar Center. The first one was coming, I think, around 1995. And 6 months later, a Sam Ash opened a block away.
There's usually a David's Bridal.
There's a David's Bridal and an Applebee's.
Yes.
So, it's like I mean, you talk about collusion. It's like they get on the phone and it's like, hey, is this Mr. Panera? Okay, listen, we're opening David's Bridal on the corner of Maple and
You call Guitar Center.
Yeah, you call Guitar Center. Well, the interesting thing about it is I talked about Lentines Music. They were the previous mob boss, right? And so all of a sudden, Guitar Center comes to town and poof, dude, Lentines Music had tumbleweeds in front of it. Wow. And it was not long, within maybe 2 years, they were just gone, like wiped off, like clean, like by the wrath of God, just woof. And we all know, again, whether it's bad or good, or pros and cons, we know what Guitar Center did. And Sam Ash, they brought the catalog to the local place. The enormous catalog warehouse now was touchable, relatable. You could walk in. I'll never forget, I walked into a Sam Ash and they had a 25th anniversary DW drum set. It was the one that had, I think it had the fiddleback inlay. I mean, the kit was like, there was one of 25 made or whatever. Sam Ash had one on the floor. You're going in, you look, it's like a $5,000 kit. It's hands down the most expensive drum set like in Ohio. Sure. And the guy hands you the sticks. And it looks like this. It does. It looks like this. He's like, he's like, oh, hey, man, welcome to the, you know what I mean? And you're like,
here you go, man.
I get to play this Van Gogh painting. Like, I get to, that's not only a holy grail, I get to fill my cup and drink out of it. The dude's letting
there
me.
You go.
Yeah. Now, if you grew up all these old, the Lentines and the Soja's music and all the little pom pas, you would be like, hey, can I look at that Thomas Starclaw? Are you going to buy it?
Yeah, because it's different, and it
was different.
they're invested in it. They bought that damn drum set.
And they knew you were going to hit it. You were going to get fingerprints on it. You were going to beat the perfect factory heads, and then you're going to walk away and say, my confirmation is in 6 months. and then the guy's mad. He's like, I pulled the drum set down from way up on high, and the guy ruined the factory heads, and now
and then he walked away.
And then he walked away, and this 12-year-old, what's he doing? Well, Guitar Center, Sam Ash, not only did they not care, they encouraged you.
Yeah.
Go touch it. Get fingerprints on it. Discover what this is. That that messed up a lot of things.
But it's weird because now you look at it. I mean, I have very, very fond memories of 2001, 2002, 3. I was a 12-year-old going to Guitar Center, knowing the staff's name, hanging out there. My mom would drop me off there and then go to like Home Emporium or whatever it is next door. And like, it was heaven. And I absolutely love it. But I do see how it kicked all the small mom and pop shops out. But now it reminds me of how Joseph Beth is like a small bookstore. Joseph Beth is like, we got to keep this bookstore. When back in the day, that was the big Goliath bookstore that kicked everyone out. What is the movie? Is it Sleepless in Seattle or something where the books and Meg Ryan and they, they talk about that. But like now everyone's like, we really want Joseph Beth because it's a nice bookstore. Same as that, where Guitar Center came in, big, huge Goliath shop, ruined all the small ones. But now we need our Guitar Centers.
We need
you need a place to go. You need a big, it's like a department store. Yes, I love small drum shops, and I'm speaking as a former Guitar Center employee as well, which that was a blast. I was 17 when I worked there for a summer, and it was a lot of fun. More fun to just go as a visitor than to work.
You don't say.
There's a lot of little 12-year-olds waiting for their confirmation who just come in and just bang on the drums and then leave.
Yeah.
And then it's like, just get out of here, kid.
Sure.
But it was a babysitting kind of thing where they just drop them off.
I've seen that. Oh yeah.
Still fun. But it was,
they drop the kids off and the kids are fun. They go to Davis Bridal or Panera and then they
get
come
some
down.
$1 at Applebee's.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, so I think that's kind of fascinating philosophically. Guitar Center, like as a consumer, they had the guaranteed lowest price. And many times they'd go under the guaranteed. It was like double, triple guaranteed lowest price. They would even knock more off what the guaranteed lowest price was.
That was a big deal.
That was a huge deal. And then they had an enormous selection of things. You could play it and hear it, do whatever you want. And then they had a very generous return policy. I believe it was 30 days with the receipt?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, well, dude, I can play like 8 gigs and then return it.
And then buy something else.
And I'm not suggesting that people should do that, but I'm saying they were vulnerable to that and they turned a blind eye or didn't care, or you're allowed to do it, or you could play it. And, if you loved it, then you would go back and buy more from them.
I mean, really, if you loved it, you would keep it.
Yeah, of course.
And want to keep it. But man, price matching is something that is just not really a thing anymore.
Right.
Because it's Amazon, but I remember price matching, kind of cheating the system one time and buying a pork pie throne, which I still have, and like showing them like a printout that had like, how sometimes it'll say like, it was like $100, but you clicked into it and it was like, well, this version's actually $200.
Right.
And I showed them the front page and then they price matched it with the more expensive one.
Yeah.
And I still feel happy about that. 20 years later, I'm like, I still won that.
I still won. Yeah. Well, they had a little bit of a lot like, sure, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Just to get out of it. Yeah. Laissez-faire. Yeah. I was thinking that. I think it's less so today. It seems to be a little bit more put together, but they had a bit of a Wild West to them that, if they could do it, they would. And sometimes maybe they lose money. I don't know how it affected their bottom line, but as the customer having that experience and all of that available to you, all these generous options. And then again, we go back to the Lentines, the local shop where Tony or Butch was. They can't compete.
No.
you know, and I think as a drumming community, it went like this. You know, it was kind of all over. This was also around the time when the internet's coming and you see drum forums. And, you know, a lot of people would write in and be like, I refuse to shop at Guitar Center. I'm always going to go to Butch at my local shop because I love him and he's a good guy. And I'm going to support that.
That's great.
Even though he's limited in what he can do, or I'm going to pay an extra $82.
Yeah.
So where do people land?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the proof is in the pudding. People landed a little bit more. The dollars mattered.
Yeah, big time. And I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's sort of always what wins. Where it's like, that's like kind of being like, now, like, I'm not going to order anything off Amazon. I'm going to live my whole life just supporting local. And it's like, it's not really realistic. Or like, I'm going to get some sticks, and you know, at Guitar Center they were $11, and at a local shop they're $16.
Yeah,
and it's like. Maybe a nice mix of both. It's way better to support a local drum shop.
Absolutely.
But Sam Ash is interesting too, because it's always I worked there too as a drum teacher, and it was always kind of the I don't want to say, like, I liked Sam Ash a lot. I don't want to say second fiddle, but it was kind of a Guitar Center was the big number one. I mean, it had to be. And then Sam Ash was the you know, it just seemed to always be following in their footsteps a little bit.
Well, and then as some of these local shops, you know, evaporated, the Guitar Centers and the Sam Ash, they had a personal touch. Dennis Chambers came to the Sam Ash in Cleveland, Akira Jimbo. I saw Rod Morgenstein. So, I mean, they became sort of, they had a local flair to them.
Yeah, the drum offs.
The drum offs. I was in the drum off. I was in it for a number of years.
Yeah, I never won.
I did locally, and I won my night. I then went to the collective night. Like all the people who won the last 4 weeks are going to compete. And of course, I go up there, and the other guy who happened to win a different week against me that I went up against was this fellow by the name of Chris Coleman. And so,
wow.
Oh yeah. So I went up. My favorite is I went up against Chris Coleman in the drum off locally.
Oh God.
Yeah, on the local level, and it was insane.
Yeah,
it was exactly what you thought. You're like, because you're like, I'm just in Cleveland.
And this is like, it's Chris Coleman. It's C squared.
It's C squared. Yeah.
Yeah. And I won the first night a couple times, but then you get to this. I got to the second night, and it was like I practiced like crazy for the first one.
Yeah.
And then the second one, I'd be like, I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. It was like a 14-year-old, very confident. Like, this is just, I fell apart.
You felt right. That's I practiced my ass off on that stuff, and I remember I went and I did the regional one. Lost to a 12-year-old in Chicago. Yeah, here I am, like I'm a grown ass man, and it's like a very good 12-year-old. He won regionally in Chicago, and I'll remember they paid for your flight out.
Wow.
And I flew on Guitar Center's dime from Cleveland to Chicago, and I remember sitting there. I had this whole thing routine planned out, and I remember I had a Rumi quote in my head because I was so beyond it at that point. I was like, man, I can't study this anymore. I can't play it anymore. I can't control it. I've been working on this for 3-4 months. I got my ass handed me by Chris Coleman. What else can happen?
Yeah.
And I remember the quote was like, you know, it was something like, if our instruments, you know, burn up, it doesn't matter. We're all just music. And we've arrived at a place where it's all just music, and I found that was the only thing that really kind of got me out of my head. Yeah. Of like, you know,
this doesn't matter.
This doesn't matter. Yeah, this doesn't matter. But damn it, dude! I swear to God, I thought I was a little better than that 12-year-old dude.
I think he won because of the gimmick.
Furious,
of being a 12-year-old.
Man, furious.
Yeah. So you beat him up outside after the concert.
Yeah. I said that. Yeah, exactly. I said, hey man, let me ask you something. Have you ever kissed a girl? Yeah, well, I have.
Yeah, and then you run away.
And then I ran.
Yeah, you got him good.
I got him, yeah.
Mars Music was where I got my first drum set, which I don't know how, I mean, that might have been, I imagine that was a national thing, but Mars Music, I got my first Percussion Plus kit there when I was a kid, but then Sam Ash moved into the space of Mars Music, which
Yeah.
was a perfect,
Wow.
not much to change there, probably the same inventory, but that was another big one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that really seemed like a big era. And I feel like the next sort of glacier coming through would be the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, they overlap, of course,
Yeah.
but
I mean, they do, because Musician's Friend that was the website I used to go on before.
absolutely.
I feel like Guitar Center, and again, I want to say that I do, and I think Guitar Center is doing some cool stuff now with drum. They're trying to have like drum shops, more of a drum shop feel, and
Yeah.
doing cool clinics and stuff. So definitely, like, lots of people work there. Like, it's, I think, good for Guitar
Oh,
Center,
yeah.
but Musician's Friend and shopping online, Guitar Center always had a website, but it was always kind of like, to me, it was like you have to order it from stores, and it was a different thing than a giant distribution
Yeah.
type deal.
Well, yeah, and I mean, along with each like Musician's Friend and Guitar Center, I mean, eBay was a massive, massive game changer, and that's kind of
Yeah,
when I got into the gear game. I mean, I was playing drums, of course,
yeah,
since I was 11, but eBay came out, and I really started buying and selling off eBay, and eBay did something that no other place did, which is it was like a funnel, like of all the universe, like all the gear in the universe came down into this one funnel, and it was there on eBay. There was just the bar
yeah.
that you could type in Slingerland snare, and
And then you find a ton of them.
find and stuff you had never seen, never heard of, wasn't at Musician's Friend,
Yeah,
wasn't in the Trading Post or the Recycler, wasn't on Craigslist, and
yeah,
wasn't new. And you were like, I don't even know what this is. There's a
yeah,
cloud badge on it, or it's what was the flange Slingerland, the one that had almost like a banjo top on that, like you could play on the
yeah,
top. You're like, I've
yeah.
never seen this before. You'd maybe see like, oh, they made a super sensitive Black Beauty. Like I
Hmm.
didn't know what that was, and then you'd see like, oh, why are these Wood Rogers drums with the bridge thing going for so much money? And they'd be like, oh, that's a Wood Dynasonic,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was the holy grail back then. And you're like, man, they made one in steel gray ripple, they made one in black diamond, and you would it was like the world's library of vintage drums and discovery.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like almost a source of research
Oh my
as
gosh,
well, because without
endless.
buying it, you're not buying all that as well. I
No,
mean, I
no.
I to this day use eBay to find photos of certain like old catalogs, or
Mhm.
you search like 19, like someone would do an episode about gear, and they'll say, oh yeah, the Tama Star Class, or the Tama Rockstar ad from 1992.
Yeah,
You search it on Google, it takes you to eBay where someone's selling it.
yeah. That's right.
So
That's absolutely right.
you could really find a lot of stuff just for research purposes. But that's, I mean, we're talking about like the .com boom at this point when eBay came out, and everything. You're right. I mean, it's basically what AI is now for technology.
Mhm.
At that point in time was the internet changing everything.
100%. And eBay got a jump on it in a way that if you needed old Camco lugs that you're not finding anywhere. I mean, maybe you have some luck, not so modern drummer. There's a dude selling old Camco lugs, but it's like, I mean, this would have, the bow tie lugs or whatever, the bread and
Yeah, yeah,
butter
yeah,
lug. So you could find almost anything, and it was in one place. It
yeah,
wasn't all balkanized like it is today. Um, because now I think we're very much away from that today, and we'll get to that. But
for sure.
um,
Well, and there's protection too, of like buyer protection.
yeah,
Whereas like buying it in like the recycler or something, you're meeting someone in a parking lot.
hmm
But I remember eBay and PayPal and all that working together, and you have like a little bit of like safety in ordering something used online.
totally. And let's be clear. I mean, you're not meeting the guy from the Trading Post at 1:45 a.m.
No.
But you are buying that, that EAK flat ride,
Yeah.
and you're still up, and you're like, wait a minute, I
Eating
just
some cereal,
yeah.
watching, looking in your underpants.
And you just found out, you're like, what an early American K. That does look different. And then
Yeah.
a lot of people selling it would just put in the descriptions, and you would learn a lot about the description. They'd be like, they only made this model for, like there's that 75th anniversary Ludwig out there.
Mhm.
And you're like, man, I've never seen that. That's really bizarre. And it says like 75th anniversary with there's the drum set, I think had the eagle on it.
Hmm.
It was wood with the eagle, and then sometimes you see
Sure.
the 75th anniversary badge. You're like, I've never seen that. Not going to find that in the recycler on Craigslist or
Wow.
yeah. And the drum forums would be parallel to eBay. They'd link things to it
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, but they didn't have the enormous page after page of thousands of listings.
So, but then eBay, there's things in between there. And the whole time we're talking about this, of course, there's small drum shops, Columbus Pro Percussion,
Oh, yeah.
all your different ones that have been thriving and having a good business this entire time. That's going on while this is happening, obviously.
Yeah.
There's still drum shops. There's always been drum shops.
I think what's interesting is the drum shops fought a lot of that. eBay, they didn't really like it, and I don't blame them.
Yeah,
I knew
that's
a lot
true.
of local ones didn't. They're like, kind of ticked off a little bit. But then what happens is I think the ones that survived adapted to getting on
You
eBay.
have to.
Yeah, and then there's
Yeah.
all of a sudden like Columbus Pro Percussion. You're like, well, yeah, you see them on eBay,
Yeah.
and there you go. So
Just box things up, tape it up, and then ship it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just selling it locally. But when did Reverb come into play? Because I imagine that's kind of the next.
that is the next. I think the interesting thing about Reverb, I actually, Reverb sort of combined the eBay experience of there's all these things online. You can still buy Camco lugs at 1:45 a.m., but it had a little bit of the local, friendliness
Yeah.
of a Frank's Drum Shop. It's only instruments. It's other musicians, so in theory they know what they're talking about. It's usually not a guy who's like, I found this at a garage sale, don't know what about it, old.
Yeah.
Meanwhile it's an old Zildjian or whatever. That's
Yeah.
nice.
Symbol
Yeah.
misspelled or something.
Symbol misspelled. Yeah, my favorite. So you'll see that on Reverb those too, but then you're just like, well, that dude's just a bass player. So
Yeah.
they it's so they tried to make it more musician friendly, took away a lot of the nonsense and the stuff. And
Yeah.
then they have all these resources on Reverb about like, oh, what is my item worth? If you're selling it or you're buying, like, okay, K custom dark rides sell between $250 and $350. And then they even have descriptions that you can use yourself.
Oh, that's nice. And
Yeah.
content that's like
All sorts of
the history of the 808
the history
drum
of, yeah.
machine and these videos. And they've got, I think Reverb is a really cool platform.
It's-
Is that your primary well, I guess you're not doing eBay. I mean, you have your own website,
Yeah,
of course.
I mean,
but
Hazel should, it's hazelshould.com.
Yeah.
That's my website, and that is far and away where I sell most things through because the prices are the lowest, and it's just
it's your own marketplace.
it's my own marketplace, and it's easier. I mean, it's just me and the customer. So if anybody has a question, they can just call me at 216-577-7552. Whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there you go. You need to make a jingle, like a song.
It's sort of like a 1-800 number.
Yes,
Yeah,
sort of.
Sort of. It's a little bit like you're calling a room in heaven.
Yeah. It's Jerry's house.
I'm answering. I'm at the gate. No, they I sell most through my site. And one thing I like about it is they're in a third party. If there's an issue or a question or a guy doesn't know, should I get the 13-inch HH hi-hats or the 14, it's just, you can just call me as opposed to like you type it out, then you wait a day or two through Reverb's messaging, and then maybe the guy gets back to you. By then, maybe you've lost the customer. Maybe the guy found something else. Maybe the guy's on vacation in Hawaii. Maybe he already had his confirmation. He got some other gift.
So the grown man's being confirmed now. I mean,
So
it makes me think too, Facebook Marketplace.
oh yeah.
because we talked about Craigslist a little bit, and but Facebook Marketplace, man, which really, I used to be on Craigslist all the time. Now I am pretty much exclusively on Facebook Marketplace for like, I just look at it for fun and then just buy old camera gear. And I will look for like I bought a box of camera equipment, which is stuff I do for work, for $80. And I think I parsed the whole thing out and sold it all for about $700.
Yeah. Wow.
Because they just kind of like, it was one of those like camera like box of camera gear. And then you message them. Same thing happens with drums. That's more of a lucky local, hey, I found this crazy deal kind of thing, as opposed to Reverb is you're not really you get lucky, but it's national.
It's national. Yeah. I mean, that the Reverb and that stuff, whether you get you lucky, that's about the quick trigger finger, right?
Yeah.
I got to get that. Right. And then your internet goes out. You're like, yeah.
Get off the internet.
Yeah.
Turn off Paw Patrol.
Well, I'll tell you what's funny. Turn off Paw Patrol. This drum set I actually have. It's a DW Collector's. It's actually up on Facebook Marketplace. And yesterday a guy wrote to me and he said, "Hey, how's it going? I would be happy to trade you some acting lessons for your drum set." And I was like, let me think about that now.
That's, I love getting offers.
Yeah.
There's been some weird ones over the years. Like I am always selling stuff on there, and it's like, hey, are you interested in like a non-running Honda Civic for your whatever? I'm like, let me think about it. No. But thanks for the offer. Or some weird gaming computer that I have no use for, but you really do think about it. You're like, you should do it, man. You should become an actor. You're in La La Land.
I am. I thought I went, it'd probably be better than selling drums.
It's got to be easy to be a famous actor.
Yeah. So one thing I think about the eBay and the drum forum and the drum websites and the community era is that's when old drums became vintage drums.
Yes, and super cool.
Yeah, and super cool.
Popular.
And popular, yeah. And so what was, if you had a 5 snare, say in the, 2002, nobody, if you had one, say in 1992, nobody knew what the hell it was. Like, I don't know what that is. It's kind of weird. You can see through it. Well, you have a 5 snare in 2005. People are like, oh, I know what that is. Buddy Rich played one. Those are really cool. Yeah. It's acrylic. And now there's guys like on eBay, you can look up all these different 5 snares. There's a guy who wants that. He lives in Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah.
He's been looking for it for a long time. So, the vintage market exploded.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah. That's where the downside, again, pro and con, it's not really a con, but the price of everything really did get crazy because everyone wants it. It's like the old Ludwig standard thing where they became $1,000 drum sets when they were $300.
Yeah.
Or the days of, or I remember going to a pawn shop 2 years ago and, I saw a big R. Rogers Tom or something. And I'm like, well, how much do you have on this? And then they take out their phone and they get online and they look and it's like, never mind. Like,
yeah.
Or they think they have something that they don't have and it's overpriced and you don't really find the good, crazy garage sale deals.
The guy types in Rogers snare and he's like, he sees the wood Dynasonic. Oh, those are $2,100.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like, no. It's not that. Come on, man. It's a big R.
Yeah, or an R360 kit or something. I remember seeing one somewhere, and it was like $400, and it didn't have a bass drum. And it's like at a pawn shop or at a flea market. It's like you don't know what you have.
Yeah.
So they get too Google happy. But well, I would say the next glacial shift was Hazelshud in the market of of drumming. Really though, guys like you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess a time for the small drum shop that's popped up online. I mean, it's interesting. Hopefully, the local mom and pa that's used the internet to to really reach the world over, and make and hopefully curate certain things. But everything's available now. There's no longer just Slingerland dealers. I mean, one would hope it's now combining all the elements, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you have the vintage stuff. You can find the Camco lugs at 1:45 in the morning. In the case of my business, at Hazelwood, every single cymbal has a video, so you can
Yeah.
listen to everything.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, there's never anything like having the item in your own room.
No.
Never. Whether it was, Frank's Drum Shop, Hollywood Pro Drum from way back in the day. God bless those guys. They had a great holiday party yesterday. One of my favorite shops. One of the few old timey shops left. You still go
Yes, I
in
saw a
there.
picture of it.
Yeah, it's like they have a card catalog system where they pull out wing nuts from the card catalog. That's so nice that that's still around.
Yeah.
And you can go in there and have that experience. It smells like wood. And
The smell of shops. I mean,
yeah.
I remember the smell of going into work at Guitar Center. I remember the smell of
Mm.
going into work at Sam Ash. The smell of going to Columbus Percussion and Badge's Drum Shop here in
Yeah.
Cincinnati
Yeah.
now even has a smell. But like what you're saying about using these online tools is just a way for local drum shops to be, to compete with the online,
Right.
mega websites and use it to their advantage. But I don't know, call me crazy, but I think I've seen more drum shops. Maybe it's more because I'm more a part of the community than I was, 5 or 10 years ago, being, here doing the podcast.
Right.
But I feel like there's a lot of drum shops out there now.
Yeah, I think there are, and they can cater to a local community and they can cater to the global community. Hopefully, everything is like I said. There's something from all those eras. The Reverb or the YouTube era. That YouTube was another big, enormous influence, and
Sure.
certainly like Memphis Drum Shop. I had YouTube videos up. Now I have YouTube videos. Everybody has YouTube. A lot of people do. And so you have all these tools at your disposal, and you also hopefully have to some extent the panoply of gear before
Yeah.
you, the universe of gear. One thing that is, I'm not going to say it's worse, but it is difficult. It did all used to be on eBay, and it was very simple to find. It was very easy to find the piece on eBay because everything was there. Now,
Mhm.
like I said, it's much more balkanized. It's much more. It's like a mosaic of all these different shops. They all might have something cool in there, but you do have to search more.
Yeah.
Which one of the
But
things I think is like our relationship with the gear. One of the things I think that's interesting about now, and I would love to hear what people think about this, is this paradox of choice.
hmm.
When you have, say, you're interested in, say, you're a John Bonham fan, you want to get some Peisty sound edge hi hats. You're like, I want to get some sound edges, but then you go and you see, like, okay, over there are some Sabian accelerators, and they're 13s. Here we have the 2002 15-inch sound edge. Here we have the signature Peisty sound edge. There's the Zildjian Master Sound A's. There's the A Custom Master Sound, which is a brilliant finish sound edge. And you might have 6 or 7 or 8 different choice of sound edge hi-hats.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, I don't know, man. I like John Bonham. I just wanted to order the thing from Thoroughbred Music that said sound edge.
Yeah. Too much, and then you can't. You hear too many too closely. You can't differentiate too much unless you're a.
What
You know.
it's like the Netflixication of it, right? Where they talk
Yeah.
about you have all these wonderful choices before you, and you
Yeah.
scroll, you watch each trailer, watch the oh, look at this one. Oh man, do I want to dive into something deep like with that has 4 seasons? Oh, look at this little biopic. It's just a 45-minute thing. And then pretty soon an hour and a half has gone by, you're exhausted and you haven't watched
You didn't
anything.
watch anything.
You
Yeah.
didn't watch anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would be curious to see how the listeners feel about that. Do they experience that? Was there a particular era that they liked, or are we in that best era right now?
That's interesting because to eliminate that overabundance of choices would be going to the drum shop that just carries Zildjian, Slingerland, and whatever sticks
Right.
at that point in time, and you played what they had.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome. And I think this is a great idea for a topic. So yes, definitely everyone comment what your favorite, maybe just comment when you grew up, what it was like for you. Because I think it's really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at your website and I think there's probably kids out there. Like I remember watching Primus music videos that I illegally downloaded, going to Indoor Storm's website,
Wow.
watching
Yeah.
Pork Pie gear demos that would be on their website, and then looking at the price and going, dear God, that's $2,000 for that 4-piece pork pie.
Right.
And then go back to watching Primus videos.
Go watch it. Right.
So I'm sure there's people out there who just for the fun of it, who are coming up in the drum world, like going to your website and just digesting it, which is what it's all about.
I mean, my site, since everything has videos and you can listen to it, I have maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 flat rides, all different makes, all different models, all different eras. I would suggest people use my site as a resource of just to learn. If you don't know what a flat ride does, or you don't know where you'd use it or how you might use it, and you're like, I don't understand a cymbal without a bell, which is cool. Listen to you can compare and see what it does. Or like, okay, 13-inch hi-hats, they're higher pitched, but they're Ks, so a little bit darker and a little bit warmer. How does that compare to regular A new beats in the larger 14-inch size?
Sure.
Well, you can hear it all, and you can figure out, your relationship with gear that way. I mean, hopefully it is. I would encourage people to just go out there and experiment, explore, and learn. I don't ever think it's about finding the perfect snare drum or finding the perfect kit. It's about, learning, education, feeling fun, about playing, whatever it is. If you're playing in your basement, you're decompressing from your day, or you're playing in a band, or if you're developing if you have a relationship, people either online or your local drum shop, go find the Tony or the Butch.
Yeah.
They're out there.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was growing up. There's a guy named Van, and there was George at Guitar Center, and you'd hang out with these guys, and they're the coolest people in the world. I think people look back very fondly on the time that they grew up, because it'll be different in 10, 15, 20 years.
Where do you think it's going to go from here? What do you think? What's the next glacial shift in gear buying?
God, I don't know.
Acting? We're all going to take acting classes.
We're all going to trade. Yeah. We'll only barter for lessons in other vocations. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, that's hard to say, because in 1950, they wouldn't say you'd buy it off of a computer. You'd buy it off of a little screen in front of you that gets connected to the world through a fiber optic cable. You can't tell. But I don't know. I mean, AI is so crazy right now that maybe there's some sort of use for that. I don't know. I mean, you got your finger, on the pulse of everything. What do you think?
I think AI is going to feature prominently in the future of like I said, the guy from Academy Music, the Tony, would come over, he'd look at my drum set, and he told my mother, well, he needs a floor tom, that's next. I think you're just going to ask AI, like, what should I buy if I'm in a rock band? If I, what ride cymbal should I buy if I'm playing, Sepultura?
Yeah. Or even AI drum teachers and music teachers. And which that's just a whole nother topic. That's a whole other giant thing that can, ruin another series of careers. But
well, you know what? I think the overlying theme is there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
And our relationship with that. What are we going to highlight?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, Gerry, let's tell everyone here. So hazelshould.com, HAZELSHOULD.com. You have gift cards, which I think is super cool.
Thank
and
you.
A great way to get people, it's like, hey, what do you want for Christmas? You don't tell your mom, look at, figure it out. You say, give me a gift card to Hazel Should. It's Christmas Eve, so it might be a little bit late when you're listening to this, but
we celebrate Boxing Day. It's fine.
Yeah, Boxing Day or any day, birthdays. But
and you can buy them at 1:45 a.m. I'm not
anything.
going to meet you in the parking lot with the trading post.
No, no. I mean, the last question for you is: have you ever thought about opening like a brick and mortar shop, or do you kind of like what you got going on with
That's
online?
a great question. I definitely like what I like what I have going on online. And I do want to say, if there is anybody who has any questions, that is my cell phone number. If anybody, I mean, you can call me, you can text me, and I mean that. I'm open to field questions about drums, about cymbals. If you see something, say you saw me on this podcast, or with Bart, and I'm happy to field any questions, because although it's being online, there's a distance. I'm happy to. I want to be the Tony.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm Tony.
He's
So yeah,
Tony.
and although I have my own place and it's all internet, I still want to act like I'm the shop next to the Victorian bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tony at the shop next to the Victorian thing
yeah,
is Gerry in a room at his
yeah.
house
A
on the
little
internet.
kind of like this in the closet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to bring a personal, I mean, the relationships are still important. I
Yeah.
actually think they're probably the most important part of it. I mean, it's really nice if you get 15-inch Sound Edge 2002s and you try and be John Bonham, but actually, there's an ending to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the relationships, I think, are more important. So
Absolutely. Well, and I think this is a good way people can get to hear you and trust you and go to your website and learn everything from you. So I will put the description. I will put all the info in the description, hazelshould.com, but also 216-577-7552. I'm reading that off Gerry's website. So again, Gerry, thank you for coming back
it's
on the
my
show, man.
pleasure.
We'll
Anytime.
have to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year. If you're turning over a new thoughts, new leaf or whatever, I'd say, have fun. Maybe bring an ice bell to a gig.
Yeah. Change things
Yeah,
up.
change it up. I mean,
Bring an ice bell.
try and make it appropriate, but
Yes, or
yeah,
if you're trying out for Primus, good luck to you. Bring the
yes.
Zill bell.
Hmm.
Leave the ice bell. Bring the Zill bell. Um, anyway, yeah. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy late Hanukkah. Happy early New Year's. And every other holiday out there. So again, Gerry, happy holidays to you, my friend.
Happy holidays to you too, Bart. I had a great time.